For decades, Chuck Connors was the very embodiment of stoic strength, rugged integrity, and quiet heroism. As Lucas McCain in The Rifleman, he played the widowed rancher who used his lightning-fast Winchester rifle not just to fight bad guys, but to protect his young son and uphold justice in the Old West. The show was a staple of late 1950s and early 60s television, and Chuck Connors was its towering heart. But behind that square jaw and all-American charm, there was a more complex man driven, conflicted, sometimes controversial, and fiercely private. Now, long after his death, new reflections from those who knew him, worked with him, and loved him are shedding light on the secrets of a Hollywood star who never quite fit the mold. From baseball fields to the silver screen-born Kevin Joseph Aloysius. Connors in Brooklyn in 1921, Chuck Connors had anything but a typical Hollywood beginning. Before ever stepping on a set, he was a professional athlete. Connors played both Major League Baseball and NBA basketball, a rare and impressive feat. He once said, "I wasn't born to act, I was born to compete." That mindset, some say, shaped not only his characters but his career. Connors was never satisfied being second best. Whether it was in sports, acting, or his personal life, he had a drive that sometimes bordered on obsession. Former co-star Johnny Crawford, who played Connors' on-screen son, Mark McCain, once described him as intimidating but kind and added, "You always knew he cared deeply, but he wasn't easy to figure out, a control freak on set." Behind the scenes of The Rifleman, Connors was much more than just the leading man. Multiple cast and crew members from the era later revealed that Connors had a strong hand in shaping storylines, casting decisions, and even camera angles. He had this vision for the show, said one former production assistant in a long-forgotten interview. And if something didn't match that vision, he'd let you know. Loudly, while some called it passion, others called it dominance. Connors didn't like to be challenged. Directors rotated in and out of the show faster than usual, and writers often found themselves reworking scripts overnight to meet Connors' standards. He wasn't trying to be a jerk. One script supervisor recalled, "He just believed he knew that character better than anyone." And to be fair, he was probably right. The tension with Johnny Crawford, though fans adored the father-son relationship between Lucas and Mark McCain, behind the scenes it wasn't always warm and fuzzy. Johnny Crawford, just 12 when the series began, later spoke about the pressures of working with someone as intense as Connors. "He was protective of me, yes, but he also expected perfection. I remember once I flubbed a line and he didn't say anything in front of the crew, but later he pulled me aside and said, 'We don't have time for mistakes.' Not here, it scared me a little, but I respected him." Their bond eventually grew stronger off camera, especially as Crawford matured, but it was never a typical Hollywood mentorship. It was more like a father-son relationship with all the complications, intact discipline, distance, and occasional warmth. Still, when Crawford passed away in 2021, many noted that Connors had always referred to him as the son I never had. Even though Connors himself had 4 biological sons, the politics of Chuck Connors, one of Connors' most surprising and secretive legacies? His deep involvement in conservative politics. While many Hollywood stars of the 1960s leaned left, Connors was quietly aligned with the political right. He was a staunch supporter of the military and law enforcement and reportedly had private meetings with President Richard Nixon and later Ronald Reagan. In fact, Reagan and Connors shared a friendship built on mutual respect and conservative values. Connors even attended Reagan's first inauguration in 1981 and was considered for an ambassadorial position, though that never materialized. His political leanings were largely kept out of the public eye, not because he was ashamed, but because he believed they were private. He thought actors talking politics on camera was inappropriate, a family friend once said. He'd say, "They pay us to act, not to preach." A private life full of contradictions off camera. Connors lived a life of paradoxes. He was married and divorced 3 times, and had a reputation for being romantically elusive, even distant. Though charismatic, he never quite seemed to settle. His relationships often suffered under the weight of his intense work ethic and his rigid expectations. He wanted perfection in everything, said his second wife, who asked not to be named in past interviews. And life doesn't work that way. People can't be controlled like a script. Despite his towering, tough guy persona, Connors also struggled with bouts of self-doubt. Some friends say he never fully forgave himself for walking away from baseball or for the opportunities he missed by refusing to compromise in Hollywood. There were whispers, too, about Connor's struggles with loneliness. Despite fame and success, he kept a small circle. He preferred horses to people, and his downtime was often spent on his ranch, away from the flashing lights. The surprising Russian connection, perhaps one of the strangest secrets to emerge about Connor's in later years, was his bizarre brush with Cold War diplomacy. In 1973, he was invited to Moscow as part of a goodwill mission related to American television. While there, he reportedly struck up an unlikely friendship with Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev. Yes, that Brezhnev. The two shared an appreciation for Westerns, and Brezhnev was allegedly a huge fan of the Rifleman, Connor's Ever the Showman. Brought Brezhnev a personalized rifle replica as a gift, engraved with "To my friend Leonid from the Rifleman." It was an act that startled U.S. officials but amused the Soviet leader. He thought Chuck was a real cowboy, laughed a political aide years later. And Chuck? He loved the attention. The legacy he didn't plan for. Chuck Connors passed away in 1992 from lung cancer. He was 71. At the time, his passing didn't make front-page news. But among fans of classic TV, it hit hard. What many didn't know was how much Connors had left behind. Boxes of journals, handwritten scripts he never finished, and letters to people he admired, some never mailed. Some of those writings have only recently begun to surface thanks to the efforts of his grandchildren, who've started digitally archiving his personal effects. What they reveal is a man both larger than life and deeply introspective. A man who loved his country, his craft, and his solitude. A man who never stopped striving, but who also never felt quite understood. "I played strong men," Connors once wrote in a letter to a friend. But strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just showing up again after you failed. Final thoughts. The Rifleman revealed it's easy to remember Chuck Connors as the square-jawed hero riding tall on a dusty trail. But the truth, as always, is messy and far more human. He was a star who defied expectations, an athlete turned actor, a Western hero with a fiercely private soul, a political conservative in a liberal town, a perfectionist who carried quiet regrets. Now, as stories continue to emerge from those who knew him best, Connor's legacy is being reshaped, not diminished, but deepened. He was more than the Rifleman. He was a man of secrets, strength, and contradiction, and maybe that's what made him unforgettable.